I'll admit there's no real good introduction to this matchup, and the matchup is probably a little bit weird, but nonetheless, it's what Justin, who paid for this video to be made, wanted me to go over. The win conditions for both characters are the same. Danzo is going to try to kill Kabuto, Kabuto is going to try to kill Danzo, except Kabuto just has to do it 10 times over. Before we get started with the video, I'd like to ask you to subscribe to the channel, leave a like on the video as well. We're 10 subscribers away from 1 million and I want to hit that soon. And I also want to say thank you to the sponsor of this video, VoiceMe. Ever wish you could chat with Gojo, spar with Goku, or drop your own hero into the story? Then you should check out FableVerse, a free platform on VoiceMe that lets you dive into deep interactive stories across every genre and share your creations with the world. On FableVerse, you can create any character, from anime icons and gaming legends to your dream companion, and drop them into living interactive stories. You can chat with your favorite Naruto, JJK, and anime characters, and jump into adventures instantly featuring Naruto, Gojo, Goku, Luffy, and many more. Creating is super simple. Just describe your character, name, personality, gender, and vibe, then choose one of 3 images that FableVerse provides. Launch the story and chat with your own characters. Click C to get personalized images that react to your conversations and share them with the world. Make anything from Goku in the Looney Tunes universe to Homer Simpson in the Spider-Verse. And here's the best part. FableVerse is running a limited time giveaway. Create any character and send at least 8 messages in the character chat for a chance to win at least one of 5 $100 gift cards. Just make sure you're logged in so your entry counts. Hit the link to the character creator in the chat and in the description below. Try FableVerse for free on VoiceMe and start your first story today. Looking at how Danzo and Kabuto compare physically, it almost doesn't even seem fair to talk about this fight in the first place. Given that both these characters don't particularly hit very hard and instead have a plethora of hacks at their disposal, obviously the most important statistic to even talk about is speed. This is a category that Kabuto takes by a country mile. Danzo at his strongest, at his fastest, at his best, is only somewhat able to just keep up with MS Sasuke, and even then, when Sasuke really tries, he's blitzing Danzo numerous times over. The only time Danzo is able to land a proper hit on Sasuke, if you even want to call it a hit, it's whenever Sasuke is jumping off of his bird and Danzo catches his throat. The obvious difference between this and other examples is that Sasuke is not on solid ground and is instead just falling out of the air at Danzo, which would obviously make him move slower and make Danzo have an easier time reacting to whatever Sasuke is about to do. And even then, the end of this interaction, when Sasuke actually lands on the ground, he cuts Danzo's arm off and then spins and cuts him in half before Danzo is able to do anything about it. Now, you might be remembering that Sasuke took heavy damage in the Danzo fight, and you wouldn't be wrong, but that damage didn't come from Danzo. If you remember, at this point in the series, using the Susanoo still hurts Sasuke a lot. This is before he even unlocks the later stages of the Susanoo. So when he does unlock those later stages of Susanoo, which is during the Danzo fight, you literally see him start coughing up blood just from the fact that he's even using the Susanoo at all. Danzo hits Sasuke with a wind blast whenever he's literally catching him off guard, and then he hits him at the end of the fight whenever they both rush in for that last attack that Sasuke baited Danzo into because he was trying to get him to use his last Izanagi. During Kabuto's fight with Sasuke, the difference in speed couldn't be made any more clear. One quick thing that I didn't mention, Danzo isn't able to get out of the way of Sasuke's Susanoo arrows. He either takes the hit and dies with Izanagi, or as he admits himself, is unable to weave signs in time to actually evade the jutsu, so he uses wood style in order to divert his path. He's unable to ever get out the way of one of the arrows. When it comes to Kabuto, in order to even be able to hit Kabuto with one of the arrows, they have to trap him in via Itachi using Magatama beads to limit Kabuto's path of movement. And even though Sasuke does successfully hit Kabuto, Kabuto wasn't moving, so he just hit a still target. Whenever Sasuke tried to hit Kabuto earlier by throwing his sword at him that was cloaked in Chidori, Kabuto jumps to the ceiling before Sasuke can even realize. After Kabuto jumps to the ceiling, then Sasuke realizes that that's where he moved to. A bit later into the fight, Sasuke tries to grab Kabuto with his Susanoo after Kabuto cuts Itachi in half, and not only does Kabuto successfully evade it and get to the ceiling, he also properly counters Sasuke's fireball after it was fired with his own water ball and completely overwhelms it. All these instances combined create a strong likelihood that Kabuto is just outright much faster than Danzo. This is on top of the precognition he has through Sage Mode and the other abilities that form has access to. But honestly, no real Danzo debate is about whether or not Danzo can beat up his opponent. It's about whether or not his opponent has an actual counter to Kodo Matsukami and whether or not they can put Danzo down 10 times before he's able to get them at least once. Kabuto is fortunately one of the few characters that might have a genuine counter to Kodo Matsukami. For one, we know that whenever Kabuto enters Sage Mode, and specifically whenever he's fighting against someone who is the Uchiha or has the Sharingan, he's going to cover his eyes and turn off his eyesight so that he does not get put under any ocular genjutsu. And since he can use Sage Mode, he doesn't have to rely on any sight anyway, since Sage Mode allows you to have a sort of sixth sense and sense the entire environment around you. Kabuto should have knowledge of the fact that Danzo has Kodo Matsukami. He does know that Kodo is the only genjutsu that can undo the Edo Tensei, and he also knows Danzo had Shisui's right eye when he's telling Obito that he might be able to get some more of Shisui's DNA out of it in order to make Shisui a reanimation as well. So with Kabuto having knowledge, it makes sense that he would employ his strategy of turning off his eyesight, especially since he knows already how dangerous Kodo Matsukami is. Turning off his eyesight in any other scenario, we would 100% conclude that the person could no longer use any type of genjutsu on Kabuto. But since Shisui's genjutsu is an ocular genjutsu and not a visual one, I'm not sure that Kabuto turning off his eyesight would inherently matter to the genjutsu being used in the first place. For one, we know with Kodo Matsukami, you don't have to actually establish eye contact to activate the jutsu, as Danzo's using it while his head is literally wrapped in bandages whenever he's controlling Mifune at the Kage Summit. However, that's kind of a two-way street in this instance. Whenever Kabuto turns off his eyesight, he does also cover his eyes with this thin layer of skin. Normally, I don't think a cover would be too important to activating a genjutsu or not, considering that Sasuke was able to activate genjutsu on Killer Bee while he had his shades on. But in Kabuto's case, Itachi intentionally lifts these covers up in order to activate the genjutsu on him to tell him to release the Edo Tensei. Now, it very well could be the case that since the shades are just part of B's design, Kishimoto doesn't really consider them whenever Sasuke is casting the genjutsu. But in Kabuto's case, like I said, he does go out of his way to turn off his vision and cover his eyes behind that, even though he has on glasses that would block his eyes in the first place. If we appeal to the Itachi novels, which I know there's some debate on whether or not these are canon, but I'm just gonna bring it up anyway. If we appeal to the Itachi novels, Shisui does say that for the visual jutsu of a normal Sharingan, your gaze has to intersect with the gaze of your intended target to some degree. You need that direct action in the flow of chakra. But the Mangekyo Sharingan allows me to sidestep all that just a bit. I just have to look at my target's eyes and I can pour my chakra in, even if our gazes aren't intercepting. And the amount of chakra is several times more than with the normal Sharingan. So the target falls into the visual jutsu instantly. They have no idea anything's even happened. We also actually get to see this earlier on in the novel in action whenever Shisui puts Mukai under a genjutsu in less than 1,000th of a second, taking advantage of the fact that he can pour all of this chakra into him via the Mangekyo Sharingan. But in every instance that Kodo Matsukami is used, there's not really a character who doesn't have eyesight or is covering their eyes to intentionally avoid genjutsu. I honestly think it's a bit shaky to say that Danzo's Kodo Matsukami would just work on Kabuto through his eye covers. Even though Danzo uses it through his own eye covers, I think it's a little bit different because the chakra has to actually go inside of the target's eye in order to put them under the genjutsu in the first place. That being said, I don't really think Kodomatsu Kami is going to work on Kabuto, but for the sake of the conversation and keeping things interesting, we'll say that it does work, and I think that Kabuto might have another counter to it. Kabuto has a whole other plethora of broken abilities about him that I'll explain a bit later, but just being in Sage mode gives Kabuto a huge advantage over people who are going to use genjutsu on him, and based on a factor that was implemented about Kodomatsu Kami in the anime, I think Kabuto would be able to break out of it even if he was put under the genjutsu. Whenever in Sage mode, it's not the same as whenever you're using normal ninjutsu and chakra to amplify yourself and your abilities, where you're constantly getting tired from the output of jutsu that you're doing, unless you happen to use up all your Sage energy in the case of Naruto with his 2 Rasen Shurikens, or some other specific example along those lines. Paul describes that with Sage Jutsu Chakra, you continuously take in nature energy from the outside, and not only do you not get tired, you also heal and recover quicker as well. This, in combination with Naruto's already extreme rate of recovery from the Nine Tails, is why he was able to master Sage mode so quickly. Danzo can't account for or control nature energy, considering the fact that he literally does not have Sage mode, so there's no way he would be able to do that, or access to a curse mark from Orochimaru, which would also give him that ability. So he has no way to stop this basically second flow of chakra that Kabuto is going to have by having nature energy constantly running through him and constantly going into his body. I only bring this up because whenever they figure out that Mifune is under genjutsu from Kodomatsu Kami in the anime, they're able to break him out the standard way you would break virtually anyone out of genjutsu. I do understand that Kodomatsu Kami, at least according to the novel, which I did use earlier, sort of sidesteps the ability or the need to use the flow of chakra for the genjutsu, but since it is a genjutsu and therefore an illusion, it should also work through controlling the way chakra flows through the person's brain, just not their own chakra flow. It's essentially saying that you don't need to hijack the chakra flow of your opponent, since you can just disrupt it yourself with your own chakra. And Shisui's Mangekyo Sharingan allows for a lot of it to be poured in. So you should be able to break someone out the standard way, at least the way that the anime shows. And if that is the case, then Kabuto constantly taking in nature energy due to being in Sage mode should break him out of Kodomatsu Kami, at least according to the anime. Like I said though, I don't think Kodomatsu Kami would even work in the first place because of Kabuto's eye covers, but just in case you're a person who thinks it does, I think the anime does account for it and has Kabuto with the way to counter it anyway. From here, Kabuto essentially has almost infinite win cons, and like I said earlier, he's got a plethora of just broken things about him in the first place that I just want to describe. I want to go over this one first since it's tied directly to another one of Kabuto's abilities that makes him extremely broken, and it's the fact that he's able to transform his flesh into liquid the same way that Suigetsu is. It's already insane that Kabuto is able to use this type of ability to avoid physical punishment, but when he has an ability like the White Rage technique that he can complement with this current ability, it makes him seem all the more unstoppable. The data book describes that it's a technique that only those who trained at Ryuchi Cave and mastered the Sage transformation can handle. It changes the natural energy gathered inside the body into a dragon of light and releases it from the mouth. It paralyzes the sense of sight and hearing with the light and sound that are generated immediately after, and the sense of feeling by means of intense oscillation of the air, and blocks the movement. With the corneas of the snake and internal liquefaction, only the jutsu user can elude its effects. We get even more elaboration in the top left, saying that it's impossible to sustain your techniques even while you're in the middle of them because of the oscillation of the air. It also says that the jutsu opens up the opportunity to entomb your enemy without any difficulty. As far as opening moves go, this is a particularly strong one. Had only Sasuke come to this cave to fight Kabuto, he would have died on the first exchange of the fight because of this technique. He was only able to survive because Itachi, being an Edo Tensei, was able to survive the effects of this jutsu and keep his Susanoo up in order to protect Sasuke. The blinding light that gets generated is completely irrelevant to Kabuto since he doesn't have any eyesight in the first place. This would be particularly potent against an opponent like Danzo, because since Danzo respawns in the area anyway, he would just be under the effects of this jutsu again once he came back with Izanagi, and Kabuto would just be able to kill him again. Another broken ability he has is the Sage Art Inorganic Reincarnation. This gives him the ability to grant life to the inorganic earth. By filling the atmosphere with nature energy, this Sage Art can be used to enslave inorganic substances such as the earth. Amongst the various Sage modes, only those who have mastered the Sage Art of Ryuchi Cave are allowed to wield it. As the earth is infused with life, a pulse violently courses through its blood vessels, causing it to swell outward. The ground, as well as the walls and ceiling, begin to rumble like a living organism. The spines protruding from its flesh walls can be manipulated in order to impale an opponent. It goes on to say that Kabuto is stretching it freely as if the cave was made out of clay, and that the unpredictable movement here caught even Itachi, who is a genius, off guard. Considering that Danzo couldn't even outsmart Sasuke, I think it would be an extremely wild claim to say that he is on the level of Itachi of intelligence, and even Itachi was caught off guard by the technique, so it should easily be able to get Danzo. What makes Kabuto the most broken though is probably the strange transmission Distant Shadow. Kabuto, who became able to use the Attack of the Twin Demons by assimilating Sakon cells, who was one of the Sound 5, enhanced even more the application of techniques. Assimilating other people's cells in his own body, he became able to use these people's techniques as he pleased. He makes the upper half of the jutsu user appear from his body with the technique of Twin Demons, and these bodies use the technique. He can even use Kekkei Genkai as long as he assimilates the cells. And in theory, there are no jutsu he can't use. It's a highly strategic technique for Kabuto himself, who can move as he pleases even while he's using it. Essentially what that means is the jutsu user using the technique does not mean Kabuto is limited by that technique being used, and he can continue to do whatever he wants. So let's say for example he uses Taiyuya's flute genjutsu, he could then use the inorganic reanimation to make the cave hit Danzo while he's frozen and can't move. Considering how potent Taiyuya's flute genjutsu was when used by Kabuto, to the point that it paralyzed 2 Mangekyo users and Itachi had to use Tsukuyomi to break Sasuke out of it, I think it would be the biggest stretch imaginable to say that Danzo could break this genjutsu. And essentially, whenever Kabuto is using this genjutsu, Danzo has absolutely no way to attack Kabuto again. He can make Taiyuya play the genjutsu flute continuously, so every time Danzo spawns, he's immediately trapped in the genjutsu and there is literally no way out. Kabuto wins this fight, I want to say honestly 10 times out of 10. There's no real way for Danzo to beat Kabuto at all.